Welcome back to Ego and Empathy, the podcast where we explore the psychology behind human behavior and the subtle ways it shapes our lives. I'm your host, Mandy, and today we're talking about one of the most powerful and often invisible tools in a narcissist's playbook: emotional manipulation. You might have heard the term before, but what does it actually mean? Emotional manipulation happens when someone tries to control how you think, feel, or act, not through force, but through guilt, confusion, or fear. It's psychological control disguised as care or concern. And when you're dealing with a narcissistic person, manipulation isn't random. It's deliberate, calculated, and designed to keep you off balance. Let's start by understanding how this works. At first, it rarely feels like manipulation. A narcissist often begins by creating an emotional bond, one that feels intense and meaningful. They might shower you with affection, attention, and praise, and you feel seen, understood, even special. But over time, the tone shifts. What once felt like love or admiration becomes conditional. The warmth turns into coldness, the praise into criticism, and you start questioning what you did wrong. That's not an accident. That's the manipulation taking root. Now, let's talk about some of the most common ways narcissists manipulate. And remember, these tactics don't always come with loud arguments or dramatic scenes. Sometimes they're quiet, subtle, even polite. Gaslighting is one of the most well-known methods. It's when someone makes you doubt your own memory, perception, or sanity. You might hear things like, "You're overreacting," or "That never happened." Over time, you start to trust their version of reality more than your own. Another tool is guilt tripping. Narcissists are experts at turning the focus back on you, making you feel responsible for their moods, their mistakes, or even their bad behavior. Suddenly, you become the problem, and they become the victim. Then there's love bombing and withdrawal. They give you affection, attention, and validation, and then they take it away. That sudden emotional shift leaves you craving the warmth again, so you work harder to please them. It's a reward and punishment cycle that keeps you hooked. And finally, there's triangulation. That's when a narcissist brings a third person into the mix, maybe a friend, an ex, or even a family member to create jealousy, competition, or insecurity. It's a way to keep control by keeping you uncertain of your place in their world. So why is emotional manipulation so effective? Because it targets the most human part of us, our emotions. Empathetic people, especially, are vulnerable to it. You want to understand, to help, to make things right. But with a narcissist, empathy becomes ammunition. The more you try to fix the relationship, the more power they gain. Manipulation also works because it's gradual. You don't wake up one day and realize you're being controlled. No, it happens inch by inch until your boundaries are blurred, your confidence is shaken, and your reality starts to revolve around keeping the peace. If you're wondering whether you're being emotionally manipulated, here are some red flags to watch for. You often feel confused after conversations, like you need to apologize even though you didn't do anything wrong. You second-guess your own feelings and memories. You feel guilty for saying no or setting boundaries. You find yourself walking on eggshells, constantly adjusting your behavior to avoid conflict. And perhaps most telling, you feel emotionally drained, but you can't quite explain why. If that sounds familiar, take a deep breath. You're not crazy. You're being conditioned. So, how do you break the cycle of manipulation? The first step is awareness. Once you can name what's happening, it loses some of its power. You start to see patterns, not random confusion, but predictable tactics. Next, set boundaries. That might sound simple, but it's one of the hardest steps, especially if you've been made to feel guilty for putting yourself first. Boundaries aren't selfish, they're protection. They tell others and remind yourself that your emotions and your energy are valuable. Another key step is emotional distance. You can't out-argue a manipulator. You can't reason your way into fairness. What you can do is detach, mentally, emotionally, sometimes physically, so their tactics no longer land with the same force. And finally, seek support. Whether that's through therapy, trusted friends, or support groups, having people who validate your experience can be life-changing. Manipulation thrives in isolation, but it weakens when you start sharing your story. Emotional manipulation is the silent language of control, and narcissists speak it fluently. It begins with charm and ends with confusion. But once you understand the pattern, you can protect your peace and start rebuilding your sense of self. Remember, You don't owe anyone unlimited empathy at the expense of your own well-being. True connection isn't about control. It's about respect, honesty, and mutual care. That's it for today's episode of Ego and Empathy. If this conversation resonated with you, share it with someone who might need to hear it, and make sure to subscribe. Next time, we'll explore why some of us are attracted to narcissists. Thanks for listening, and take care of your mind. Until next time.